Today I want to share with you an insight I believe I've received from God regarding coronavirus. Before I do, I want to remind you that 1 Corinthians 13 says that we see in part and we prophesy in part. And that what we do with this is like looking into a mirror and seeing a dim reflection. On Tuesday the 19th of May, at 4 minutes past 4 in the morning, I saw something in my spirit, if you like, in that place where God puts this kind of information. And it was a landslide. It was a green valley, and a whole mountain came down and fell into the valley. And I was aware that it was coronavirus related. And I was shocked by what I was seeing. And as I've prayed through, what I believe God is saying is this, that there is going to be a coronavirus landslide. I wondered if this was about the economics of the current outbreak of coronavirus and its impact on future generations. But as I've prayed through that, I can't in all good conscience say that I believe that. I want to, but only because really I want to spare my blushes if I've got this wrong. I think it's a tragedy. And I'm really sorry to say that. And I'm hoping that somehow, through our prayers, that this disaster can be averted. I think that the best thing I can say about it is that a landslide does come to a stop at some point. It's normally short and sharp. I think I'm saying that the reason that this is going to happen is it's a perfect storm of human use of natural resources combined with nature then interacting on the results of those processes. I also see there are human beings who know the danger is there, but they won't do anything about it because they know they're taking a risk for reasons of power or money. And look, I need to be very clear here. I am not a conspiracy theorist, and this isn't a conspiracy theory. This is something I believe I'm seeing in the spiritual that will come to be in the natural. I have no time for this event, just that the valley is green and it's sunny and people will be enjoying that and believing they're in a good situation, and it will come upon us. I also want to say that there are other mountains of this kind that could fall upon us and will be a threat to future generations until we deal with this properly and stop mismanaging what we are mismanaging. I've already prophesied about a leadership vacuum in the nation, and that's been in the press for years now. And we've seen through the Brexit process that happening, and we're also now seeing it with the response to coronavirus. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that as Christians, we should be careful not to look primarily to government for a solution. In 1 Corinthians 15, it clearly says that Jesus is ruling and reigning until he's put all his enemies under his feet, and the last enemy to be defeated is death. It also says in Revelation 1:5 that Jesus is ruler of the kings of the earth. That doesn't mean that at some future date Jesus is going to be ruler. That means he is the ruler of every prime minister, every president, every politician, every king, every prince. Jesus is ruler of them all. He is the Lord of Lords, and he is the King of Kings. Many of us seem to be looking to government or to governments to save us, but if we forget God, then we do so at our peril. Trying to find a solution to this problem without God is putting our trust in something extremely fragile. It's like leaning on a spider's web and expecting it not to give way. I'm going to read you something from Job now that'll help you understand what I mean by that. This is what it says in Job chapter 8 regarding the ways of mankind. It says, "Can papyrus grow tall where there is no marsh? Can reeds thrive without water? While still growing and uncut, they wither more quickly than grass. Such is the destiny of all who forget God. So perishes the hope of the godless. What he trusts in is fragile. What he relies on is a spider's web. He leans on his web, but it gives way. He clings to it, but it does not hold." I wanted to know from God what the response should be, but before I could ask that question, the very next day, I was awakened with the words, "the chosen five." Now I've looked into this and I simply believe that it's to do with David and Goliath and the 5 smooth stones that he chose from the stream, one of which he used to defeat Goliath. The simple fact is that the response to this without God is a non-response. And Christians have got to respond to this next landslide by running towards it, in the sense of David running towards Goliath with his 5 smooth stones and hurling one to kill the giant. What that means in Christian terms is this, is not that we are David, because we're not. Jesus is David. We're the cowering Israelites who are scared of this. That's who we are. But we have God's ear, if you like. We have the ability to speak to God and to cry out to God. And I believe that, like Job, we should make a complaint to God. We should express our grievance, our sorrow, our anguish passionately to God. And I believe God will aid us in our time of need. It needs Jesus to defeat the foe, and the answer to this, the way out of this, lies in the hands of God's people, the church. The church has the answer to this problem, which is to express our complaint to God and to come before him passionately and tell him of our grief and sorrow at this situation. But we're not doing that, as far as I can see. What we're doing is we're letting the government tell us what's happening, and we're letting the government try to deal with the situation. And sure, people are praying, but there is a real need for us as individuals to lament, to complain to God, to repent of our own sin, and to truly pray that God will stretch out his hand and do something about the situation for us. We should, of course, pray for our government too. The Bible tells us to do that, but the government has a limited reach. God doesn't. The response of Christians must also be practical, and we must move towards the problem. We must look after our own needs while looking after the needs of others. We do as much as we can while staying as safe as we possibly can. I also have two other insights which are indirectly related to this, but will help you to respond in a better way. And they're to do with the fact that each Christian has to find their own niche, their own place in history, whichever part of history they find themselves in, and they're like a spot of ink in the pen of God as he writes that history. And also that as the troubles of the world unfold, that we stop becoming part of the problem and we as Christians become part of the solution. And I'm going to share those two things with you in other videos, not now. So in summary, there is a landslide of coronavirus coming again, and the church's response is to run towards it, crying out to God in lament, telling God our complaint, and crying out in grief and passion and sorrow about the situation, and asking him to stretch out his hand and change things and help us in our time of need. I want to finish by reading you two more scriptures from Job. One of the things about this kind of pandemic, this kind of disease that we're faced with constantly, is that we sometimes think that we're in control of the situation, but we're not. God's in complete control of everything. And the fact of the matter is that your days are numbered. When you're born or when you die are decided by God and not by anything else. It says in Job chapter 14, man's days are determined. You have decreed the number of his months and have set limits he cannot exceed. You see, your days are bounded. You can't exceed the days that God has decided that you'll have on the earth. That's actually good news, that God is in control of your life, when you begin and when you end. It's worth remembering what it says in Job chapter 34, where it says this, that if it were God's intention and he withdrew his spirit and breath, all mankind would perish together and man would return to the dust. Such is the power that God has over our lives. He is sovereign, and he's sovereign over this situation.